So, like I promised, I'm gonna be doing some testing on specific features and see how they work and the real capabilities of it. So I found a limitation with a 2-point alignment that they use instead of camera. Yes, it's functional and works in some shapes. In this particular case, and let me grab a pen so I can point exactly where I'm going. I want to have a design that goes edge to edge in this. But since the round shape and it's a little bit oval here, my intersection will be here, not here. So let me make this to turn the lights on. Let's see. Here we go. That's a little bit better. So the intersection will be in this line and it will be up here. Sadly, there is nothing there for the autofocus to work. With that being said, I can't put the intersection in the air and make it work in the same way. So I can make the vertex in the area to create generate a square and work. But the moment the element is curved and I want to do that same process, the first vertex is asking for a point of contact. Instead using the button as a point. So that is an interesting problem. You can do the square and align everything based on the 2-point if you are not using nothing that will be concave or vice versa. So let's do that in that corner. So I have the first point that I'm going to mark it right here. So when you open in the software, you create a vertex number 1 mark. So it's in that corner. So I'm going to go and mark that. There we go. It goes back, retract the autofocus, go back to that point, and now I can move it with the software, but this will go only so far, you know. And I'm gonna say that the distance is probably just 20. I want to move it 10 by 10, so I'm gonna move the distance 10, and I'm gonna say I want it here and goes now where my X is. So I'm gonna say that I want this here. A little less. There you go. So I want to mark the vertex number 2. There we go. Confirm and goes in retract. So that creates the area when I'm going to use a curve engraving. The problem now goes with the curve engraving. Again, instead using the button to confirm the area that I want to do a curve, is using the touch, the needle to find the point 1 and last point or finish point. And if the element is round, when you do that, you are not going to have a big area to engrave. So right now I have all the points and I can do the start measuring, and this automatically will go to the first point, select it, and choose a second and a third one, depending how you divide your grid. The function works, but works perfectly for smaller areas. So if I want to do something exactly in the center or anything inside the area, therefore you have something like this will not work. Once you have these kind of errors, you need to reset the focus. So it's important to check that this is in place. because as you saw this click back, if you don't check that, your focus is not working fine. Once you get the warning, you gotta go and hit reset. This will go and push the needle back to the top position and go back to restart everything again. So, like I was saying, everything works, but the concave won't work on an element like this. So, if you are going to focus, you only have the option to work in this area. So, my maximum area for this job will be that. So, vertex 1, measure the vertex 1, and again, goes back and retract, goes back to the spoon, and I have two options. So if I move this manually, or I select this and say, okay, move only 10 millimeters at a time, and I can use the arrows on the screen, and this will be the maximum basically. That's a little bit off, so I'm gonna move 1 millimeter high. One more. So based on where it is, that's my maximum spot, and I will mark the vertex number 2. There we go. Go back and retract. And now it's ready for the last step, that is mapping the curve. So I'm going to use the measurement that I basically recommend, which is in this case 5 by 5 rows and columns. And it will go and mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and jump to the next one. It will continue doing this until we have all the points that is using for mapping the curve. So again, in this case, if I want to do an engraving that goes all the way around it, all the way to the edges of the spoon, I would not be able, because the way the system works for concave doesn't let you mark the vertex 1 and vertex 2. Pushing the button in the position needs the needle to touch something. I hope they fix this on a future upgrade. I believe it will be more useful if you can mark position A and B to begin with. And also, a camera here will be useful to move the points where the machine is going to look for a curvature. Since we can't move those points, there's not much we can do about it. Let me show you now the screen. Okay, so we have the result of the area, and this is what we see. It's a 3D map of the curvature of the engraving area we select. I'm going to hit done in here for now. So as you can see, I have this element that I was looking to do from the front, very front of the spoon, all the way to the back of the neck. This was the plan. This was the original design that I was looking to do. And have, all the vegetables jumping all the way to the neck of the spoon. Sadly, we can, because our engraving area will only be doable here. And I will need to rearrange a couple of these guys inside the area if I want to keep it nice and rich. So we are about to see what happened with some of the other elements that are floating that can be engraved. So I'm going to select these elements and erase them. I put these guys here, a little bit more in here, I'm going to leave it like this, just a tad smaller in here. So there's no snap here for the middle, so you have a snap option and this is blocking the rest. It will be an interesting idea to have at least your snap into the middle functionality here as well, but let's leave it as it is. I'm going to change here my settings, so I'm gonna do in this time power 20%. I don't want too much, and the speed on this one is going to be, let's say, 300 millimeters per second, and I'm gonna do 200 lines. This is engraved. Let's hit process. Let's try again. It's not letting me process, and I'm going to assume that it's not letting me process because these elements are of the area. So let's erase these guys. Let's erase all these guys and let's put some other stuff here that are inside the area. Let's hit process again. Here we go. We have the process option. Let's hit start. And let's move back to the machine. Okay, so we have everything ready. We are going to hit the button to start the process. Air assist is set on auto. We are running this based on what they let us do with the functionality for a curve engraving. 20%, 30 millimeters per 300 millimeters per second, and this is with a 20 watts. I've been having some issues with power. I feel the power is not consistent sometimes. Feels like it's pushing more power out than it should be in some cases. So I don't know what it's all about. Also, another thing that you guys will notice is when we create the area to be engraved, we were a lot closer to the edge where, you know, each part of the fork shape is. And even though the graphic is really close to the edge on the software, this seems to do it a little bit more inside, more towards the right. So I don't know if it's a glitch because of curvature or something is happening there. You can definitely see the model going up and down depending on where it's working on. So the functionality is really good, is there. It has some limitations, of course, even if you use their own software. I feel like a firmware update should correct this. I think vertex number 1 should be set just like the 2-point alignment. Press the button and select a bigger area, and it should let us select limits or something similar, so the needle don't go on holes or other places where your module is going to get stuck. Let's wait for this to finish. I'm not using my honeycomb pins, I'm using the ones provided by it. I'm trying to see how well they do with different shapes and different elements. I've been having a lot of problems. The maximum I can use on this one to lock it in place is 2, and in a moment I move this spoon, there is no way it's going to be a second one in the same spot because the magnets tend to move and do whatever they want. So on a scenario that I will using the camera on another laser, and you guys will see next week, I will be having a photo of the area, and I will be covering the curvature on all these individually. I will show you my process in that scenario. Uh, this element is not so pronounced that you can't work on it, but it will give you definitely a better control to decide where to put an element, where to exactly lay down an element compared to what we have here. Even if you decide not to use a fully functional camera with a live preview to use everything, just like Liburn, and a snapshot of the area will be great to put on your working space, so you can get a better idea and a better understanding of how things are going to be once you finish your product. That's my opinion. So good functionality is really nice to have something to go curve and progressive focus depending on where is needed, but only works if your area is basically a square and there is no holes or nothing in the middle. As right now, to be honest, I like the concept. I feel like it's partially useless. It's more like a sales future, something that you will put in on a machine just to tell people I have something that no one else has. Not necessarily like a way to go for a laser. It could be improved. One thing that I really like on the new machine is the distance between the nozzle and the material. I really like the idea of that. Now, one thing that you guys notice too is that every time you move to a different point, it goes up and down and up and down. So that is important to know, because those movements, as much as you see it quick and fast, adds time to your process. So as much as you use the curvature engraving, you are going to keep adding and adding time depending on how your add work is. So it's just important to know that as well. It's not just the regular pass. We'll also have the movements on the Z-axis. Personally, it's not a big problem, but I feel like not having the ability to do a whole area and try to map that based on or a photo or something similar is a little bit restrictive. So, how would you do this if your machine doesn't have a progressive focus? Leave your comments below. Um, Me personally, I will go with the center of what is the highest and what is the lowest. Focus on it and go from there. Usually, lasers like a blue light diode laser don't have too much issue with at least 1 to 2 millimeters focal range. Definitely, the middle focus will be the high accuracy one, but you will still get a decent engrave and nothing to distort if you are at least 1 millimeter or up or 1 millimeter down. And the process overall is 20 minutes, about 21 minutes, and that's it. Let's the air suck the rest of the smoke for a couple seconds before we open the lid. Let's see what we have. The fan stops automatically. Let's take this out and this out, and there you have it. It is a nice engrave. It is nice and clean. The air assist did his job, but I still was looking. My original goal on this was this curve on the bowl to be my curve on the spoon. And because the nature of how the curvature focus work, that couldn't happen. Now, there's ways to trick that. Of course, you will need to put something on the level, that goes with the same height that you have on the top here to create the angle and same the angle. And you will probably need to fill this with something so the needle don't go in, and you will need to do the same here so you can cover this edge out. So you can use, I imagine you can put it on the base and use probably some clay or something like that to make like a mold where this is going to be sunk in so you can actually engrave. But at that point, I feel like the tool lose completely their function. So, final thoughts about the tool. I gotta say, it's a nice feature. Yes, didn't really work for something like this because the nature of the shape, the nature of the holes in the area, and things like that. So if you're doing a flask, it's gonna work. If you're doing a bowl and you have something right in the middle, it will probably work fine. So you think this tool will actually make everything easier and faster? I don't really think so. But it's a selling point. So that's it. I will be reviewing other functionalities on this machine. Again, the machine is pretty, works for what they intended to make it work. It's not a professional laser, it's not a work laser. It's a good machine and it's working so far. Has limitations, yes, it does, but we'll see how far we can push it. If you like the content, please subscribe, help us to grow the channel, give us a thumbs up, share the channel, and as always, fire the laser.